this section, we will go into bid adjustment. What is bid adjustment? It's a kind of automatic setting where you are giving Google the command to increase or decrease the bid based on a series of events. What does that mean? It means, for example, if condition X occurs and, for example, it applied to these keywords, then assume the bid is, for instance, 10% higher, 20% higher, or 10%, 20% lower, or however much you can adjust it up or down by 3%. The point is that it assumes, meaning what? It means the bid you are seeing in your keywords. And in your keywords, what happens is that it doesn't change, meaning your bid or the max CPC you are setting doesn't change, okay? But what happens? It assumes, because there are conditions, which I will explain a few of them to you now, because those conditions exist. Let's say, for example, assume if it has a 20% plus in your bid adjustment. If this keyword is filed and it $5 plus 20% enters the auction, meaning the bid is the same as what you see in the image. But what happens is that it assumes in the auction that is currently entering. It's as if it's entering with a 20% plus, and it's having its effect. So in the auction, it's entering with a 20% plus. But what you see here is one of the reasons that you might see that actually your average CPC during that time period is precise. One of the reasons is that your average CPC, meaning your actual CPC, is coming out higher than the bid, is that you used the bid adjustment. There's another model which is very simple, but often people make mistakes in their analysis. For example, until yesterday you had 2,000 clicks at a certain rate. And now today we've reduced it to say 1/10 of the bid. Well, the average CPC that was at that rate was actually sitting at 50%. The actual average CPC, well, I set it to 1/10, then I forget that I myself made collaborative changes. Well, this hasn't yet taken effect for the average CPC to align with 1/10, and this will cause it to decrease. So you should handle this yourself and be aware of it. Don't make bid adjustments because the previous bid was higher. But with bid adjustments, this happens where the bid you have might be higher than when you increase it, and it might actually enter the auction at a higher rate. And this happens. What can you use bid adjustments for, guys? And bid adjustments for LOC. You can use bid adjustments for devices. You can use bid adjustments for ad schedules. For your audience lists that were shown to you in previous videos, you can use them. For your demographics. For example, if someone's age is a certain amount, I want to bid higher or lower. These are the cases where you can adjust with bid adjustments. The only bid adjustment can decrease up to negative 100%, meaning it can decrease by up to 100% for devices. This is the only bid adjustment that can go down to this extent. And the maximum for all of these is up to 900%. Meaning it can increase by plus 900%. For example, if something is increased by 900%, it can go up to 10. Well, a 900% plus increase means that, for example, if music is increased by 900%, it means it has become 10 times more. Okay, and the next point I need to tell you about bid adjustment is that bid adjustment can also be applied at the ad group level, like location, like I say location, like device, audience list. Well, the top two can also be at the ad group level. And we can actually define the device at that level and apply bid adjustment for it. If we can apply bid adjustment at the ad group level, the ad group bid adjustment will be our priority. This means that whatever is more specific, that bid adjustment will be important for us. And the higher level ones won't matter as much. Just like extensions that are at a lower level. The priority will be at the edge if it exists. It will have priority over your campaign if it's at the campaign level. And priority over your account level. This is exactly the same. The lower level will have priority to make its impact. What does this mean? It means if at your campaign level, you have set, for example, plus 20% for mobile devices, right? And then if you have defined it in your ad group as well, it says reduce 10% for mobile devices in the ad group. It ignores the rest. It says you set it for me in the ad group, I don't care about the rest. Therefore, what is set at the ad group level will be your priority. It doesn't apply to the campaign. Let's take a look at a few of them. Let me tell you another point. Bid adjustment makes sense for cases like audience targeting or ad scheduling when it is defined for these two cases, or even for location targeting. What does that mean? It means if you have set, for example, the entire world as the location, well, if you have set all countries and bid for a series of countries, exclude them. You don't have something called a target. You have excluded from the whole. But if you have targeted, for example, saying you want to target the UK, or say France, or say you want to target Canada for your targeting, remember what I said about excluding? And it doesn't mean excluded, meaning you haven't excluded them among them. You can audience list, likewise, when you haven't defined an audience list, at the start of your campaign, remember that we defined audience lists after our remarketing. Well, when you haven't defined an audience list for your campaign, again, I don't have exclusions. You haven't targeted, or you haven't put it in parentheses as observation. Write this down from me in the audience list, in the campaign or ad group. If you haven't set target or observation, you can't define your bid adjustment in the audience. What does that mean? It means your bid adjustment is defined for something that has been specified for a particular segment that has been identified. This sentence can be much more meaningful for you for a specific segment that you have come and defined. It can be specified for demographic bid adjustment, which has its default that I will show you now. Well, it's the same for other cases when you are running it all the time. In fact, there is no targeted or segmented existence to apply a bid adjustment for, okay? Let's go here and review it at the campaign level as well. Look, I don't have any national lentils, guys, so I don't have anything here to define without a document. But when I come here to define it, for example, now that it's paused, for example, I define it like this. I say from this date to this date, for example, from this hour to this hour, I'm just giving an example and I can quickly forget it. When I define it, I can set it without a document when I'm listening here. For example, suppose they say, you say, sir, it's open, you define it twice, even for one day. Or for example, suppose I want to say for a full day, you have Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And on Thursday, the action is lighter. They say, you say, sir, I want to set this without a document. Assume it takes minus 20%. Well, I say, sir, decrease it by 20%. What does that mean? It means every action that is happening, the bid you have set for your keyboard, it makes this subject 100 for manuals and understands their story for automated bids, automated strategies. If it wants to enter the auction with minus 20%, what does that mean? It means if it's half, it assumes that at 14, you are entering the auction, but the bid you visually see is half. So it makes sense when the bid is allowed to have a specified segment. Let's assume I want to enter the human ID, or even its demographic. I want to refer to honor and remove it. When I come into the audiences, when you click on show table, you see here it has already given you a default series that can be assigned to your bid, right? And the next point is, guys, this topic, when we see it at the ad group level, I can define the bid adjustment here. Well, this was a general topic I mentioned regarding demographics. Now, if I have my audience list, the example I showed you there where I said we should have observation, we can do this. Guys, I'm discussing these separately with you. I also mentioned about devices, guys. Devices are the only case where you can go up to negative 100%. In fact, you can decrease it. None of them go to negative 100. All of them go to negative 90. Okay? And the next point, see, right now I'm setting this at the ad group level. Okay, if I go to the campaign level and, for example, set this campaign with a bid adjustment of, say, 5%, okay, when I go to my ad group, you see it now says lever ad group. You see this, guys. It says level ad group when I go through my ad group. If I set this, for example, to 30%, this is important for me. For Google, it's no longer important what was set by the campaign. You see, the campaign level is 5%, but here the mobile plus 10 is not important at all for it. It doesn't matter what was set over there anymore. It looks at the ad group level. If you want to block traffic on a specific device, whether at the ad group level or the campaign level, you can decrease it by 100. But there's an exception I want to tell you about. The only time the campaign is prioritized is when it comes to the device. It's when I come and set a decrease of 100, meaning if I decrease by 100%, it no longer matters at the level. What is the ad group level? At the ad group level, it becomes negative 100, meaning we've shut off the valve from our end. There, the bid adjustment of the campaign becomes important for the overall setup. In the bid adjustment device that we are currently discussing, the ad group is important. And the campaign is not important unless it comes at the campaign level and closes it at negative 100%. Therefore, the priority is with the ad group. Unless in such a case, we have another one that comes and says, then, sir, I want to apply a bid adjustment to my location. Yeah? Guys, if you see targeting, I don't have location targeting. It's true that I have location data here that shows where it has been displayed, but I don't have location targeting. I can do this when I have a specific target. For example, let's say I'm targeting Turkey. Okay, pay attention, guys. I can adjust its bid. For example, increase it by 10%, or I can raise it to 20%, or lower it, and so on. Yeah, I want to mention a point about bid adjustment. Let me tell you about the location. The point about location in the context of non-targeted advertising is this. Consider my example carefully, Maika. Suppose I have targeted and want to display in France, or I want to display in Turkey. Okay. Right, no. And for non-targeted, I set 10% for Turkey. Okay. Then I said, what if it was Istanbul? Add 20% to it, right? What happens then? Look at it this way. Istanbul is a subset of Turkey. For example, I said Turkey plus 20%. Istanbul plus 20%. If the user was in that location, the first thing to remember, guys, is that the location is no longer at the ad group level. Why? Because location targeting happens at the campaign level, so it becomes meaningless. So if I want to talk about its ad group. But there's another exception that I mentioned in bid adjustments. In addition to the device, which is at the negative level, exactly at the campaign level. I told you. It happens in the same location. Technically, when multiple bid adjustments coincide at one point, for example, when location and device and everything align together, now these two locations that are subsets of each other, I apply it and the bid gets multiplied again. Here, it doesn't multiply like those models that I want to tell you about now. Unlike the previous ones, it doesn't multiply on the multi-plus items. What happens? It says, sir, I only apply the lower one as a lifestyle. What does that mean? It means your bid adjustment in Istanbul is set as a lifestyle and it doesn't concern Turkey anymore. It says, sir, I will add 20%. Regarding the discussion on bid adjustments and multiple bid adjustments, guys, these multiply with each other. Meaning, if the mobile, for example, has a 10% plus, write down the model example. The model is such that both the keyword being filed and the user's device is mobile. Here, assume I have assumed a 20% plus if it was mobile. Its location is also, for example, in Turkey with a 10% increase. And finally, for example, imagine lentils, which at certain times like 9 a.m. and 12 noon have increased by 5%. These are multiplied together, kids, because they are actually multiplied. For instance, imagine a 10% increase is multiplied by 1.1. And again, this is multiplied by 1.1 for a 20% increase. So it doesn't have priority, but which one comes first doesn't matter anymore. Multiplication doesn't benefit from being first. They are multiplied together, meaning if it's 20%, I say that it goes up by 20%. And again, it goes up by 20%. You consider it as multiplied by 1.2. Consider a 10% increase as multiplied by 1.1. These are being multiplied together, so that's how multiples happen for them. But I mentioned two exceptions. When the divisor comes to negative 100, and the only case in its add group if its campaign becomes negative 100s. The campaign is given priority. And finally, if the add group is affected, it no longer concerns the campaign. Note that. If the same bid adjustment is applied in the add group, it no longer concerns the campaign. It's committed to the add group. And finally, regarding location, I mentioned that if there are two locations that are subsets of each other, only the lower one is considered. They are not multiplied together, so it doesn't become multiple in this way. However, in other cases, they do become multiple or decrease. There is an increase and decrease. For example, something that has a bid of 100 is reduced. It has a multiplication. And naturally, this is also a factor in addition to this. They don't want it. The price is $9.50. In the price period of 1 and 10, it will be cheaper, and it will be interesting whether it is an increase or a decrease. This is also a different situation. Yes, I know that in this case, display has, for example, placement and so on, and we don't have anything to do with it right now. The thing that you need in search right now is these few things that I have memorized about demographic, location, which is only used at the campaign level if the target of a segment is specified. Again, it only applies at the campaign level if a specific segment is targeted, right? Device, and I must mention, I forgot one, device, location, how the lens is, your audience list, and your demographic discussion in these cases. And the exception should be noted when I talked about it. Another point I need to tell you in this regard is where they should be used. For example, I come to a place where a device gives me mobile adjustments, and I see traffic or I see a computer and realize that my traffic is not suitable. What does that mean? It means I'm not getting good performance from it. Pay attention to this point, guys. As I will address performance further ahead, these are the platforms you get. For example, if your performance and goal are set for the year, well, you won't see this on the computer and you can't address it, so don't make a mistake, don't make a quick decision. Think about it correctly. You can't say, sir, I can't actually plan there because I haven't seen any computer output from it. Well, naturally, the computer is what the other person sees until they pick up their phone and call you, and you can't reach it that way. For this, you need to examine other parameters. There are situations where you see that a tablet is not useful for you, it doesn't have performance, so you might reduce it by 100%, for example, you close it. Now let me tell you, in some cases, you see that, for instance, your profit margin in the UK is much higher than in Canada, and you see that you can get better performance from it. So there, I adjust it. Set your target for a certain country and say to add this much. Or, for example, I see, let's say in Iraq, I notice that the average CPC is significantly lower compared to the max CPCs that have been set. Well, I can adjust this with the target I'm setting, and I can make adjustments. I can lower the bid in this country, right? The reason why bids have a story and a dash is because when I keep the target, it means I need to see where I went and checked in the location at the campaign level. It should be either show or all campaign with the location, meaning the place that has been indicated, right? When I see that the CPC difference is lower, I can lower the bid, of course, depending on, it might be important for me to focus on the rush. Completed on the computer, for example. Why is that good? Because of the BP kids, I see it's good, for example. I keep it in mind. I see I need to take it higher. For example, I say it's good, or I take it higher, or I see it's lower. The strategy I'm thinking about, pay attention to it. I'm telling you right here. I'm saying it's a spot. If I see I'm getting a good result, for example, in Iraq, and I see, for example, the conversion rate is good, or the parameters. One of them, I said, now be aware that this discussion has fully reached, and you can't analyze it so easily. There are important aspects in it. Well, and I see that, for example, Iraq has a good CTR and is observing it, and your CPC is very different. For instance, it's lower. I come there and say, sir, I hit the bid and say, decrease this bid for Iraq. Why? Because I'm reducing the gap. And this improves it so that I can optimize it. In some places, I need to increase the bid. Don't forget, after optimization, I increase the bids, for example, by 20% because of the country and the performance it has. I raise that bid a bit higher. But be careful, it must be targeted here in the match location. It's not in the target location. If you have a target in the target location, experience their presence. See, go for it. If your target is Iran, you don't want to target that place at all. We need to have the presence of other countries there if you want to get more exposure here, right? Therefore, creating a location in Iran doesn't make sense anymore. This is meaningful for places where you are targeting a specific location. This is also the model. In the case of lentil stew, I notice on Tuesdays my performance is good. My traffic comes up to this point, but I have performance. This is because I have a good community and I say, bring this higher. Probably its auction is heavier. Now, I'll tell you a more detailed analysis later. Probably its auction is heavier, so bring this higher so that I can get better traffic on Tuesdays. Or I notice in the morning I have better results. I can work better, but my traffic is worth it. Why is the auction heavy? Because it fluctuates. I adjust like this. I say, for example, in the morning until noon, I set one lentil stew, and from noon, I set another lentil stew. Then I come, and for the morning, I make an adjustment. I set it to plus 20%. Of course, keep in mind that this can also be executed according to the rules, which I will teach you later. But I think about this on the bid adjustment. So, for performance and data analysis that I'm doing, I also use bid adjustment. I'll see you in the next video.